Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests.
Good evening.
So I believe that self-reflection is a way to be mindful of your current state of mind, as well as a tool to reflect back on emotions and events from the past. Now, several weeks ago, I stood in this place, in the other room, where I was up for table topics, and the question that was asked of me was, Rob, what does this Robert Frost poem mean to you? And the poem was, two roads diverge in a forest. You take the road less traveled, and you're better off because of it. Well, my delivery in 1 to 2 minutes was focused around the family that I grew up in, which was focused around and well-rooted in aviation. My father was a World War II vet. He was a pilot for Pan Am. My mom was a stewardess. And my brother was an up-and-coming pilot as well. But myself, I took the path of non-aviation. I'm in sales. So I talked for 1 to 2 minutes about that, but on my way home, I did some self-reflection, driving home from the meeting. And I first thought to myself, what the heck? What was I saying? Why did I respond with the answer that I did? And where did that answer come from? Well, thinking a little bit more about it, doing some self-reflection when I got home, thinking about it the next day, I thought to myself, that's it. So growing up as a teenager, I had the great opportunity of getting my private pilot's license. And at the time, to get your private pilot's license, you needed to spend about 10 hours of doing ground school or classroom training, another 10 hours with an instructor in flight, another 20 hours of solo flight of navigation and learning how to maneuver the aircraft, followed by a written test and then a in-flight test. And as part of that in-flight test, the flight instructors wanted to make sure that you were able to maintain and manage the aircraft at all times. And one of the ways they tested that was to put you into a stall and see if you could recover. And if you're not familiar with what a stall is putting a plane, a small aircraft, into a kind of a compromised position, which depletes the lift under the wings, the plane drops, and then you as the pilot recover back out. So in the summer of 1978, at the age of 14 years old, I was working on these 20 hours of practice. And so I thought to myself after about a half hour, I think it's time to try these stalls. So as I'm flying along, I have the yoke in front of me. I'm thinking, okay, here we go. I pull back on the power a little bit, flip the flaps down about 5 or 10 degrees and start to pull back on the yoke. The plane begins to pitch up like this, and as it gets up to the near top, I give it a little bit more gas on the throttle. It stalls, the lift goes away, the front of the plane drops down, I give it a little bit more gas, and off I go back on level flight. Pretty simple. And really, I spent the day doing a series of stalls up, the plane would drop, I'd recover, stall again, drop again, almost like a roller coaster. Pretty fun little ride. So I was out there for another half hour or so doing some maneuvers, and I thought to myself, hey, before I'm done here, let's give it one more try. So I had the plane in level flight, again, pulled back on the power a little bit, flipped down my flaps a little bit, pulled back on the yoke of the plane came up again, right in that stall position, tapped it a little bit to give it a little gas to hold it there. But instead of going straight over this time, the plane kicked to the left. And down I went, spiraling towards the ground. My first reaction was to pull back on that yoke as hard as I could, and I did. Nothing happened. The plane continued to spiral down towards the ground. I was fiddling with switches in that cockpit, not knowing what they were doing. But somehow, with another pop on that yoke to pull back, the plane pulled out of that stall and it leveled back out to level flight. My life passed before my eyes. I was sweating profusely, not knowing what to do. I regained my thoughts, put myself back together, turned the plane back towards the airfield, and landed safely. For years, if not a decade, I told no one about that story. No one. I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell my flight instructor. Whether it was out of fear or embarrassment to my family of them being so deeply rooted in aviation, I said nothing. The reason I told you this story was to help emphasize my point that through self-reflection is more than just a present day state of mind of reflecting back, but it could also be connected back to events and emotions in the past that allow you to have a better and more fulfilling moment of self-discovery. For me, I had that experience with a combination of remembering and reflecting back on that story, as well as combining that with a table topic question that I had, bringing those two together and realizing that taking that alternative path, different than what my family was rooted in, was better off for me. And because of that, I'm very happy. Thank you.
Yeah.